I spent years saving every spare penny to give my parents a dream vacation across Europe, one I carefully planned down to the last detail. But on the morning of departure, they replaced me with my unemployed sister. I still drove them to the airport. Then I quietly canceled everything. That was the moment their trip began to fall apart. The porch light was still on when I pulled into my parents' driveway. It was just past 6 in the morning, and I was barely 2 minutes late. I had expected warm smiles and a flurry of excitement. After all, this was the trip I had worked 2 full years to plan and fund. Instead, my mother greeted me with a sharp tone and a suitcase dragging behind her. "You are late," she said, brushing past me toward the car. But what stopped me cold was not her attitude. It was my sister Lauren, stepping out of the house with her own suitcase. Her expression was smug, like she had won something. "What is going on?" I asked, my voice tight with confusion. My mother turned, far too cheerful for someone who had just dropped a bomb. "Oh, Violet, we decided Lauren should go instead of you. She has been really stressed lately, and this trip will do her some good." I could not breathe. "Instead of me?" I said, blinking hard. "Mom, I paid for everything. This was my gift to you and Dad." She waved her hand like it was nothing. "Sweetheart, you are always working so hard. You can take another trip later. Lauren really needs this right now." Lauren shrugged, not even pretending to be sorry. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she said, using that syrupy tone she always pulled out when she wanted something. Behind them, my father emerged. He looked anywhere but at me, handing me his suitcase like a silent apology. I stood there, stunned. All the effort, the long hours, the missed social plans so I could save up, erased in a second. Still I said nothing. I forced a smile. I opened the trunk. "Let us get going then," I said, each word like a stone in my mouth. The ride to the airport was painfully quiet, broken only by Lauren's constant chatter about TikTok videos and outfits she wanted to wear in Paris. My hands gripped the wheel tighter with every word, every laugh that left my mother's mouth. At one point my dad tried to speak. "Thank you for driving us, Violet. I know this must feel strange." "Strange is one way to put it," I replied without looking back. No one asked how I felt. No one asked if I was okay. I was just the ride. But as I pulled into the airport drop-off zone, I had already made up my mind. They had made their choice. Now I would make mine. I stood at the airport curb, watching them disappear through the sliding glass doors. My mother had hugged me quickly, murmuring some rehearsed line about being grateful. Lauren had waved with that smug smile glued to her face. Neither of them looked back. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel. The early morning light cast long shadows across the dashboard, and for a moment, all I could hear was the dull thud of my heartbeat in my ears. This trip had been mine. I had picked the destinations, researched the tours, splurged on 5-star hotels. It was not just a vacation. It was a symbol of everything I had earned and everything I wanted to give to my parents. And they had handed it to Lauren without a second thought. Driving home was a blur. The roads passed by like fog. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in silence again. Then, without hesitation, I walked into the house, pulled out my laptop, and opened my travel dashboard. One by one I started canceling everything. The hotel reservations, the private tour bookings, the upgraded international flights, the exclusive dinner reservations I had paid deposits on months ago. With every cancellation confirmation that arrived in my inbox, the tightness in my chest loosened a little. They had made me feel disposable. I was going to make sure they did not enjoy what was never meant for them. My phone started buzzing as soon as their plane landed. Missed calls from my mother. A flurry of text messages that began with confusion and quickly turned to outrage. "The hotel will not let us check in. What is going on? Call us immediately. Fix this." Lauren left a voice message filled with venom. She accused me of being petty and selfish. I listened to none of it. I deleted the messages without replying. For years I had been their problem solver. I fixed their mistakes. I accommodated their needs. I stayed quiet while Lauren always got the biggest slice of attention and affection. But not this time. That evening I made a cup of tea and sat quietly on my couch. My phone continued to light up across the room. I let it ring until the screen went dark. I was not going to fix their trip. I was not going to clean up the consequences of their choice. I was not going to explain myself. They had made their decision. Now they could live with it. By the next morning, the silence had turned into a storm. My phone was full of voicemails. Some were angry. Some were pitiful. All of them were exhausting. I scrolled through the messages with a strange sense of calm. My mother's voice cracked as she pleaded. My father sounded disappointed. Lauren, of course, was furious. She accused me of ruining everything, of being dramatic, of acting like a child. It was ironic. They had replaced me, erased me from a moment I had spent years building. And now they wanted me to rescue them from the disaster they had created. I turned the phone off again. Instead of answering, I went for a walk. I breathed in the crisp air and watched the leaves rustle under the wind. I let the silence settle into my bones like warmth. For the first time in years, I was not rushing to smooth things over. I was not apologizing for someone else's poor choices. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Grace, my oldest friend, holding 2 cups of coffee and a raised eyebrow. "Your mom called me," she said without even waiting for an invitation inside. "She is spinning a very dramatic version of events." I rolled my eyes. "Let me guess. I canceled the trip out of spite." Grace sat down and handed me a cup. "Pretty much. But I told her she must have misjudged the situation. That you don't usually act without a good reason." I smiled. Grace had always known how to read between the lines. She was the one person who had seen the cracks in my family long before I was ready to admit they existed. "You did the right thing," she said. "I know it does not feel like it now, but this is the first time you are putting yourself first. And that is something to be proud of." I nodded, but there was a lump in my throat. I had spent my life trying to earn their love with good grades, steady jobs, carefully planned gifts. This trip was supposed to be the thing that finally made me enough. Instead, it had finally made me see the truth. "I am tired, Grace," I whispered. "Tired of being the second choice. The easy one. The one who always gives in." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Then stop. You don't owe them a single thing." And sitting there with the weight of it all pressing on my chest, I realized something. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was not the end of something. Maybe it was the start. 2 days passed before I turned my phone on again. The moment I did, it buzzed so relentlessly that I had to silence it. Missed calls. New messages. Voicemails piling up like they had somewhere important to be. I scrolled without responding. My mother's words were a mix of guilt and blame. She wanted me to know that I had ruined something precious, that Lauren was heartbroken, that my father could barely speak from disappointment. Lauren's messages were worse. She called me selfish. She said I had embarrassed the family. She claimed I had made her feel worthless. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. Then came my father's call. His voice, usually calm and composed, was strained. "Violet," he began, "your mother is upset. Your sister is devastated. We need to talk. This whole situation has gotten out of hand." Out of hand. That was the phrase he used to describe them taking the trip I had planned and cutting me out of it. I let the call go to voicemail. Then I made tea and sat by the window, watching the sky darken and the wind rustle the leaves in my yard. I told myself I would not cry. That I had made the right choice. Still, something inside me ached. They did not miss me. They missed the version of me who fixed things, who cleaned up their messes and made everything feel normal again. But that version of me no longer existed. That evening, just as I was finishing dinner, another call came through. I almost declined it again, but something in me paused. It was my father. I answered. He sounded tired. Older somehow. "Your mother wanted me to call," he said. "She thinks maybe you would listen to me." I said nothing. He sighed. "Look, we all made mistakes. But you punishing the whole family over one decision is not right. You are better than this." I set down my fork. "No," I said quietly. "I am just no longer the person who lets everyone walk over her. That is not a punishment. It is a boundary." There was a long pause on the other end. "You always were the one who held everything together," he said. "That was the problem," I replied. "Everyone got to fall apart, and I was expected to hold the pieces. I am tired of carrying that weight alone." He did not respond. I waited for an apology. It never came. So I hung up. And this time I did not feel guilty. The weekend came quietly. as if the universe itself knew I needed silence. I spent Saturday cleaning the apartment, rearranging furniture, and tossing out things that no longer served me. It felt like shedding an old skin. With each drawer I emptied and every corner I scrubbed, I reclaimed a part of myself that had long been buried under obligations. I did not check my phone. On Sunday afternoon I drove to the coast, parked my car by the cliffs, and sat with a notebook in my lap. The wind whipped through my hair, but I did not mind. For once I had no itinerary, no one to appease, just the sound of the waves below and the freedom to think clearly. That evening Grace stopped by. She walked in with 2 iced coffees and her usual no-nonsense energy. "So," she said, handing me a cup, "what is the next move for Violet the Liberated?" I smiled, the kind that reaches your eyes. "I am not sure yet, but it feels good not knowing." She nodded. "You finally made space in your life. Now you get to decide who deserves to be in it." I leaned back on the couch, her words settling into my chest. She was right. For so long I had tried to earn a place in my own family. Now I realized I had been trying to unlock a door that had never been mine to open. Late that night my phone buzzed again. A message from Lauren. It read, "I still think what you did was unfair. But maybe I could have handled things differently too." That was all. No apology. No accountability. Just a vague admission wrapped in defensiveness. I read it twice and then locked my phone. She was not ready to see what I had seen for years. But that was no longer my problem to fix. The next morning, I opened the spreadsheet I had used to plan the trip. I deleted each canceled reservation one by one. Flights, hotels, tours, transfers. Line after line of erased plans. Then I opened a new tab. I typed solo travel ideas into the search bar and let myself dream. This time it would not be for anyone else. Not for approval. Not for recognition. Just for me. A new chapter had already begun, and I was finally the one holding the pen. A few weeks later I boarded a flight to Rome. No group itinerary, no matching luggage sets, no family drama at check-in. Just me, a single suitcase, and a passport that finally felt like mine. I had used the money I saved from the original trip to plan a solo adventure. Not as an act of revenge, but as a declaration. A quiet statement to the world that I was done waiting to be chosen. Rome greeted me with chaos and charm. The language was unfamiliar, the streets unpredictable, but none of that scared me. It exhilarated me. Each step I took down cobblestone alleys and into crowded piazzas reminded me that I was not only capable but alive in a way I had not felt in years. I sipped espresso in a cafe where no one knew my name. I wandered museums at my own pace, lingered at fountains when I felt like it, and ate gelato in the morning just because I could. There was no one to rush me, no one to dismiss my choices. Every moment was mine. One evening, I sat on the Spanish steps with a leather-bound notebook in my lap. The sun was setting behind the rooftops of the city, bathing everything in gold. I wrote without filter or fear. No lists, no obligations, just dreams. Start a small creative business. Learn another language. Visit 5 new countries. Make a home that feels like peace. For the first time, I was not planning around other people's preferences. I was building something for myself, and it felt like breathing after years underwater. On my last night in Florence, I treated myself to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river. Candlelight flickered on the table, and I raised my glass of red wine in a silent toast. Not to the pain I had endured, but to the strength I had claimed. When I returned home, the familiar sound of the front door clicking shut behind me felt different. It was not an end, but a continuation. A return not to old patterns, but to a place I could shape on my own terms. The next morning I opened my laptop. Emails from clients waited. So did new messages from my parents. But for once I let them wait. I made coffee. I lit a candle. I sat at the table alone in content, ready to plan the next chapter of my life my way. The messages from my parents were polite at first. They asked if I had returned safely. They hoped I had enjoyed the trip. They even asked if we could talk sometime soon. But there was something cautious in their phrasing, like people approaching a door they were no longer sure they had the right to knock on. I waited a week before responding. Not out of pettiness but clarity. I needed space to decide if their interest came from genuine reflection or just damage control. Eventually, I replied with a simple message. I had a wonderful time. I am focusing on myself right now. I appreciate the space. The response came quickly. We understand. We are here when you are ready. It was strange, this new version of them.
Tentative.
Quiet. For so long they had spoken over me, around me, for me. Now they were silent, waiting to see if I would allow them back in. I spent the following weeks rebuilding. I joined a photography class at a local community center. I repainted the walls of my living room, choosing colors that made me feel calm instead of ones that matched the furniture my parents once insisted I keep. I donated old clothes, old furniture, old guilt. Evenings were now mine. I would sit near the window with a cup of tea and a book, sometimes writing lists that were no longer obligations but possibilities. One evening, Grace came over with a bottle of wine. We sat on the porch, the late spring air warm against our skin. She raised her glass to mine and said, "Here is to starting over." "Do you think they will change?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She paused. "Maybe. Or maybe they won't. But that does not have to be your burden anymore." And she was right. A few days later I received a letter in the mail. An actual letter, handwritten in familiar cursive. It was from my mother. Her tone was softer than I remembered. She apologized for the trip, for the years before it. She said she had been wrong, that she was learning. She did not ask for forgiveness, only that I know she was trying. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I was not ready to respond. Not yet. But for the first time I felt no guilt about that choice. I was not being cruel. I was being kind to myself. And that was enough. It took me another full month before I agreed to meet them in person. We chose a quiet cafe on the edge of town, one I liked for its soft music and the way the sun filtered through the large windows. I arrived first, ordered tea, and picked a table by the window. My heart beat faster with every passing minute, but I kept my breath steady. When they walked in, I barely recognized them. My mother wore no makeup, her clothes simple and practical. My father's posture seemed smaller, less commanding than I remembered. They approached slowly, not with their usual confidence, but with the cautiousness of people who knew they might not be welcome. We exchanged polite greetings.
No hugs.
No smiles that reached the eyes. Just quiet, heavy air between us. I waited. Finally my father spoke. "We wanted to see you, Violet. No expectations. Just to talk if you're willing." I nodded slightly. "I am listening." My mother cleared her throat. "We have been in counseling," she said. "Family therapy. Jessica pushed us into it. At first we thought it was unnecessary, but now we see how much we missed. How much we hurt you." I sipped my tea and said nothing. "Your sister," she added, "has also been talking to us. She told us things we never really heard before. Maybe because we weren't ready to hear them." My father looked directly at me then. "You were right, Violet. About the trip. About everything. We thought we were doing what was best, but in truth we were being selfish. And you were always the one who gave without asking for anything in return." My chest tightened. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just nodded again. "We know we do not deserve your trust back right away," my mother continued. "But we would like to try if you'll let us." It was not a grand apology. There were no dramatic promises, no attempts to sweep the past under the rug. Just two people trying to take the first small steps toward making things right. I looked at them, really looked, and saw that the people in front of me were not the same ones who waved from the airport that morning. Maybe change was possible. Maybe it wasn't. But I knew this, I had changed. So I said softly, "We can start slow. That's all I can offer." My father exhaled. My mother's eyes shimmered. And for the first time in years we just sat there. Quiet. Still. Together. But this time it was on my terms.